Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is NopeNapNarp, and today we take a look at how my favorite superhero of all time, Batman, deals with a truly scary battle with a psychotic break in Batman Arkham Knight. That's right, in this episode of Psychology of Gaming, we examine how the developers at Rocksteady accurately depicted the experience of a psychotic breakdown within Arkham Knight, and how they used it to not only enhance the story and the gameplay, but also to flesh out the psyche of Batman, without glamorizing this serious mental health condition. And of course, we take a look at the role that the Joker plays in this tale and how he really is the representation of Batman's fractured mind. It took a while to get this video out as I had to replay the entire game to refamiliarize myself with the story, so thank you for your patience, and of course, spoilers ahead. So without further ado, let's jump straight in to today's video. So with this video, I want to start with the psychological perspective so that we can have a baseline understanding of what a psychotic break actually is, and then later we can look at how it's implemented into Arkham Knight. As with any discussion of mental health, I encourage you to remain respectful of those suffering from these conditions and to keep an open mind and to help your fellow human beings. You may just learn something from it. And with that, we move on to the psychological discussion. As I've mentioned in this series before, the study of psychology is broken up into many different subcategories, such as biological psychology, cognitive psychology, developmental psychology, and so on and so forth. In this video, we dive into abnormal psychology, the study of unusual thoughts and behaviors, as well as the mental health disorders that they manifest as. An abnormal psychologist studies psychological disorders such as depression, addiction, anorexia, schizophrenia, and so on and so forth, as well as their causes, their symptoms, and of course, most importantly, their treatments. So when an abnormal psychologist talks about a psychotic break or a psychotic breakdown, what are they actually talking about? Well, a psychotic break isn't necessarily a mental health disorder on its own. It's more of a term that's used to categorize the following symptoms into one package. Those symptoms being auditory, visual, and taste-related hallucinations, delusional thoughts, reckless behavior, disorganization, paranoia, and an overall disconnect between a person's mind and reality. Often, the term is used to summarize some or all of these symptoms when discussing mental health disorders, such as schizophrenia, dissociative identity disorder, or for the purposes of this video, Creutzfeldt-Jakob Disease. Okay, yeah, we definitely gotta talk about Creutzfeldt-Jakob Disease too, and you probably don't recognize that term at all, but if you've played Arkham Knight, you definitely heard it before.
It's altering them. They're becoming...
Joker. My God.
It's a form of Creutzfeldt-Jakob Disease, but mutated beyond anything on medical record.
A few hours into the game, as Ace Chemicals is exploding and Batman prepares to sacrifice himself to save the city, Scarecrow's fear toxins start wreaking havoc on his mind. In one of the game's best reveals, Batman turns to load the last canister only to have the Joker appear out of nowhere and shoot him right in the face. And of course, we know from playing the game that this version of Joker is a hallucination that exists only in Batman's mind. Following this, you play as Jim Gordon for a bit of a flashback where it's revealed that 5 people have been given a blood transfusion using Joker's infected blood, and they are beginning to lose their own personalities and are turning into versions of the Joker. It is during this scene that Batman reveals that they are suffering from a unique strain of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Batman also hints that he is one of the 5 who is infected with Joker's blood, and if you played Arkham City, you of course already knew that. So what is Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, or CJD for short? Well, it's an extremely serious medical condition that manifests in the mind, and on average, a person diagnosed with this disease only lives for about a year because there is no cure. It's a very serious and scary condition. Some of the early symptoms of the disease include memory problems, changes to behavior, and hallucinations, while later symptoms are more serious, such as dementia and falling into a coma even. Now, of course, this disease is not pictured exactly like this in the game, as victims are instead losing their personality and becoming more like the Joker instead of falling into a coma. But let's focus on those early symptoms for a minute, as many of them are signs of a person experiencing a psychotic break from reality. And this of course aligns with what our hero Batman experiences through the course of the game. The combination of Scarecrow's fear toxin and Joker's infected blood play havoc on Batman's conscious mind, and this leads him to experience a psychotic break during the events of the game. So now that we have the background information, let's see how it all plays out in Batman Arkham Knight. During the first few hours of the game, Batman's mind is relatively steady, and he doesn't really show any symptoms of a psychotic break until he is introduced to Scarecrow's fear toxin while in Ace Chemicals. The very first hint we get that Batman's mind is starting to break away from reality is when we see one of his fears manifest itself into his perception of the real world. In this scene, he begins to load canisters into ports in order to neutralize the blast radius of Scarecrow's fear toxin. After putting one in, the computer reports that the radius has been reduced by 25%, and 50% after the second one.
Neutralizing agent deployed. Blast radius reduced by 25%. Neutralizing agent deployed. Blast radius reduced by 50%.
But after loading the third canister into the port, Batman hears the computer voice say that the fear toxin's blast radius has increased by 1000%. It's a subtle way of hinting to the player that Scarecrow's toxin is starting to influence Batman's mind.
Neutralizing agent deployed. Blast radius increased by 1000%. 1000%. 1000%.
The chemical is allowing one of his innermost fears, the inability to save Gotham, to manifest in the form of an auditory hallucination. Of course, soon after this, we see that Batman's drug-induced psychotic break is becoming more serious, as he encounters a straight-up visual and auditory hallucination of the Joker. And of course, this is just the beginning. Throughout the game, Batman's break from reality becomes more and more serious as the Joker's strain of CJD begins to take over more and more of his mind due to the strength of Scarecrow's fear toxin. The developers of the game use this as a way to explore Batman's psyche, specifically the things that he fears most. Losing the ones he loves, and perhaps more importantly, his fear of losing his identity and the Joker taking control of his mind. Bruce's psychotic break is used as a central story element in the game, and Rocksteady attempted to not only capitalize on it from a narrative perspective, but also from a gameplay perspective. This includes everything from the Joker's sudden pop-ins, to his commentary on what Batman's doing, to the full-out hallucinations, to fighting with Joker's influence, and of course, at the very end, playing as Joker himself, simulating that the Joker has taken over Batman's mind. This struggle for control of the body between Batman and his hallucination of the Joker highlight just how fragile Bruce's mind has become as he experiences a true psychotic breakdown. Now, let's look at some of these things in a little more detail. Let's start by looking at the game's narrative a bit, and we'll come back to the gameplay later. As I mentioned earlier, symptoms of a psychotic break include hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, and loss of control, which Batman displays throughout the game in various ways. Obviously, the Joker's presence alone is evidence of Batman's severe hallucinations, as the Clown Prince manifests himself frequently with clear visual and audio projections. While dealing with these hallucinations, Batman tries to hide the impact that they are having on him from his teammates such as Barbara, Jim Gordon, and Alfred. But even as he continues to focus his efforts on stopping Scarecrow, his mind breaks further and further from reality. The Joker hallucinations become more and more frequent, and Joker's influence becomes more profound as Bruce Wayne struggles to maintain control over his mind. The Joker prods and pokes at Batman and constantly mentions that soon he will have control over Bruce's mind and body. And we know losing control of his mind is something that Batman has worried about for a long time, probably since realizing what the Joker strain of JCD has done to the other people who are infected. He is so afraid that he has Robin maintain a fifth cell in case he were to lose his mind, a place where Batman can be stored if he succumbs to the JCD virus. And because of this fear, Batman pushes those close to him away. And because of this fear, Batman pushes those close to him away. Instead of asking for Robin's help in stopping Scarecrow, Batman refuses his help, claiming that Robin's task of finding a cure is more important. He also declines Nightwing's help later on in the night, and of course Nightwing ends up saving him. Here, we can see that Batman is distancing himself from the ones closest to him, as his paranoia and hallucinations get worse. Another element that the developers use to really show off Batman's sense of paranoia are the not-so-scary jump scares that you experience throughout the game. You know what I mean, those scenes where Batman is clearly experiencing a massive hallucination and then you turn around a few times until boom, something's right there to scare you. Or other examples include when, like, you open a door or grapple up a building only to have the Joker jump out to scare you. These are used to represent paranoia in Batman's mind. So we see hallucinations and experience loss of control throughout the game, all while we feel Batman's sense of paranoia grow. All of these are, of course, the symptoms of a psychotic breakdown. Like I mentioned earlier, the developers have also found a few ways to work Batman's psychotic break into the gameplay. There are, of course, a few segments where Batman loses control over himself for a while, and his fighting style becomes much more aggressive and sadistic as the Joker is able to take over. You can first see this while aboard Stag's airship, as when Batman is injected with Scarecrow's toxin, he becomes more aggressive. Even Scarecrow himself comments on it. Batman's eyes become a shade of green to let the player know that Batman is losing control over himself in moments like these. And of course, the Joker too comments that the fear juice is giving him more and more power within Batman's consciousness. It's moments like these that show how the developers were able to bring Batman's breakdown into not just the story, but also into the gameplay to some degree. So finally, let's talk a little bit about how Batman is able to overcome his psychotic break. After suffering throughout the night, Batman is finally confronted with his greatest challenge yet. As he surrenders to Scarecrow, Batman is injected with a crazy amount of fear toxin and is forced to confront the biggest fear within his mind. What happens when Joker takes control? The whole game has led up to this moment, as Batman must now confront his inner demons and put this psychotic breakdown to rest, and return to the true reality to stop Scarecrow. This segment, of course, starts with Joker taking complete control, and since he's no longer locked away in Batman's consciousness, he is able to free roam and do whatever he pleases. We watch the Joker use his newfound form to kill off tons of goons and fellow villains, and then we learn that the only person who came to Joker's funeral was, of course, Harley Quinn. We begin to see that the Joker's greatest fear was being forgotten by Gotham. But again, it's not necessarily about Joker here. It's about Batman overcoming his hallucinations and the fear toxin by isolating what gives Joker power within his subconscious mind. That being simply continuing to remember the Clown Prince. Remembering Joker is what gives him strength in Batman's mind. In this final scene, the player's control is taken away from Joker and given back to Batman, which greatly symbolizes that Bruce is starting to get out of the psychotic break he's been experiencing all night. In one final act, Batman forces Joker into a cell and locks him away somewhere deep in his mind where he'll never pose a threat again, to be forgotten forever. With this act, Batman has overcome his greatest fear, and Scarecrow's fear toxin loses its effect. With one final effort, Batman is able to stop Scarecrow, and of course, save Gotham. But more importantly, he has saved himself, and allowed for peace of mind to return. He goes on to stop the rest of Gotham's criminals, and with no more threats to the city, Batman, or Bruce Wayne rather, is able to protect those he loves most by activating the Nightfall Protocol and sacrificing himself for the good of everyone else with his mind at ease. And with that, we come to the end of today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. Again, it took me a little longer to make because life's pretty hectic right now, but I'm happy with the final product. So I want to hear what you guys think in the comments below. Did this video give you a newfound perspective on Batman Arkham Knight? For me, it did, and playing it again was a ton of fun. Also, I gotta say thank you guys so much for the recent boost in subscriber count. I mean, we went up 20 subs in January, which for me is a ton. So thank you to everyone who's new for subscribing, as well as those of you who have been here before. I'd like to do something special for you guys at 100 subs, some sort of giveaway perhaps. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below as well. And finally, because of the nature of this video, I wanted to also leave a link in the description to a website where if you're struggling with mental health, or someone you know is struggling with mental health, perhaps you can find some help. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Consider subscribing for more. And as always, have a nice day, and take care.